Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
You find out that the investigation is shutting down, and this Republican report is finding no collusion by the president.
Well, and this is sort of typical these days. I found out by reading in the newspaper. The Republicans leaked it to the press before even informing us. But, Dawn, it doesn't come as a complete surprise. The Republicans have said for some time they're under immense pressure to shut down the investigation. And it was apparent really from the very beginning, from last March when our chairman went on that midnight run to the White House, that their real object was protecting the president. It wasn't doing a credible investigation. And so they went through the motions of bringing witnesses in, and we learned a great deal through those witnesses. But when we needed to compel them to answer questions, when people like Steve Bannon would Stonewall or Corey Lewandowski or others, all too often they were willing to accept no for an answer. They would ask, very conclusory questions like, did you conspire? Did you conclude? And if they said no, the Republicans were content to leave it at that. That's not conducting an investigation. That's going through the motions. So the fundamental problem from the beginning was that my colleagues viewed their job as protecting their client, the president, rather than getting to the truth. And I think that's a grave disservice to the country.
You're kidding. I mean, of course, that's Adam Schiff. And he's here somewhere. He's here in Palm Beach. You know that? Because that backdrop, that was Palm Beach Gardens. I'm like, please come and pay us a visit. We're just, right down I-95 from you. I mean, like, literally 10 minutes. 10 minutes south.
This is like the third time I've seen him on the TV from Palm Beach Gardens.
I don't know, but we should reach out to his office and say, next time you're in the area, let us give you lunch. A little lunch is good. We have iced teas, we have water, we have coffee. Today's Brett's birthday, so, if I would have done we would have had donuts, but we don't because the donut shop was sold out. Because they sell these artisan donuts. See, this is the artisan donuts are like the new craft beer places, right? Of the aughts now, in the teens, you have artisan donut shop, and they sell out like by 8 o'clock in the morning. They make a bacon donut. I wanted to get for Brett. Because what's better than fried bacon? I mean, nothing, right? Except herky jerky is good, but maybe I could give them some herky and have them put that inside. Ooh. Oh, an elk donut. Okay, I digress. But Adam, anytime, Congressman Schiff, if you're in the neighborhood, we've got plenty. So come visit us and we'll feed you. We'll feed you. We'll love you. We'll give you a microphone and you can sit there and go through my collusion list and tell me if I'm wrong. Is what I need to know. Am I wrong when I say it is patently obvious that the Trump campaign was taking help from the Russians, that they asked for help from the Russians out loud in public, that there are tapes of Roger Stone saying he did talk to Julian Assange, that Steve Bannon got to show up and hand the House Intelligence Committee, supposed to be doing oversight on the executive branch, and Bannon gets to hand them 25 questions. The answers to all of those are no. Let me go home now. I mean, this is just so ridiculous. And of course, this ties into Rex Tillerson's State Department debacle. The guy was so bad at his job, but then, of course, we knew he would be. And we told you that this cabinet of Trump's was bizarre. We got Mick Mulvaney doing double duty, right? Double duty because he can't even fill the seats anymore. So now we've got some nondescript congressman from Kansas heading up the freaking State Department, which Rex Tillerson hollowed out. We don't even have any Russian speakers that can, sit on that wall and tell us whether or not the Russians are hacking us. I mean, they were appropriated money, and Rex Tillerson spent $0, hollowed out the entire State Department. The GOP is so full of crap that they want to concentrate on protecting the 2018 election. That's why they shut this thing down, because they want to focus on protecting the 2018 election. You know, there's a special election going on right freaking now. Right freaking now. They've done nothing. They've done, not one of the 23 analysts that work in the department's Global Engagement Center, okay, speaks Russian. Not one person. They have yet to spend any of the $120 million in the State Department. They have been allocated $120 million since 2016 to counter foreign efforts to meddle in the elections or sow distrust in our democracy. And Rex Tillerson made sure that not one dime got spent. We have a freeze on hiring at the State Department while he fires people, so you can't bring in new people. And, of course, we can't promote anybody because there's a promotion freeze in place as well. And so we have the Global Engagement Center, which is located somewhere in a dank basement in Washington. Seriously. And not one person speaks Russian. Not one person. Thanks, Rex. It's Rexit, everybody. Rexit. We spend billions of dollars on cyber capabilities, but everything that we have done has been ineffective against Russian efforts on freaking Facebook and Twitter, and apparently direct messages between Junior and Roger. And, we can't just subpoena, or we can, but Congress won't use their subpoena power, so we don't get to see those direct messages. They just conclude everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. The Global Engagement Center is responsible for assessing the Russian efforts, and then they're supposed to set about amplifying a different set of voices to counter them. Maybe anti-propaganda would be good here. Apparently, one of the people, the Secretary for Public Diplomacy under Obama, said, quote, "There are now thousands of former Russian journalists who have been exiled or fired, who are doing counter-Russian stuff in exile, who could help us," said one Richard Stengel, Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy in the Obama administration. He had oversight over the Global Engagement Center. And he said, at the end of the Obama administration, Congress appropriated they directed the Pentagon to send $60 million to the State Department so it could coordinate government-wide efforts, including Defense Department, Department of Homeland Security, to counter Russia's propaganda, separate and apart from the other government actions like cyber attacks. And Tillerson sat around for 7 months and twiddled his thumbs trying to decide whether to spend any of the money. The State Department finally sent a request to the Defense Department on September 18th. All right, transfer the funds. The Pentagon said, well, it's the end of the fiscal year. You lost your shot at the money. We're not sending it. There was another $60 million that were available for the next fiscal year. Pentagon, State Department, they go back and forth for another 5 months. How much could the State Department have? The New York Times issues a report in August and starts asking, where's this money? The State Department was allocated all this. Where's the money? Where's the money? The Pentagon goes, all right, we'll transfer $40 million. That is 1/3 of what was intended to be sent to the State Department so that they could hire some Russian speakers. Look at some former Russian journalists in exile who want to work against the Russian state. Then the State Department said, all right, well, we expect to receive the money in April. Steve Goldstein is a guy, he's the Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy. He said he would contribute $1 million from his own budget to kickstart the initiative quickly. He said, quote, this funding is critical to ensuring that we continue an aggressive response to malign influence and disinformation, Goldstein said. And then somebody, a top official in the Defense Department named Mark Mitchell, said, well, we're still wrangling. We know we promised them $40 million to transfer to the State Department. We're still a ways off. Congress is infuriated because that funding was approved with bipartisan support. And still, Rex wouldn't, get it. He wouldn't. I mean, and the DOD is still arguing with. It's unbelievable. And so you have. It's well past time that the State Department's Global Engagement Center gets the resources Congress intended for it to effectively fight Kremlin-sponsored disinformation and other foreign propaganda operations, said Senator Robert Menendez of New Jersey, the top Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. This is unbelievable. And, most of the center's leaders are working on they're temps. I swear to God, they're temps that are working in the Global Engagement Center because Rex Tillerson wouldn't promote anybody. The analysts work in a warren of cubicles in the basement of a tired building that once housed the Office of Strategic Services, the World War II predecessor to the CIA. Get right on that, Pompeo. The analysts are divided into 5 teams. They work in 4 languages: Arabic, Urdu, French, and Somali. That is a small fraction of what Congress envisioned when they appropriated $120 million for this. James K. Glassman, the Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy during the Bush administration, said the center's uncertain funding and temporary leadership reflects the administration's lack of interest in countering either jihadist or Russian propaganda. Quote, they've got the vehicle to do this work in the center, Mr. Glassman said. What they don't have is a Secretary of State or a president who's interested in doing this work. Instead, Rex Tillerson is drastically shrinking the department, leaving a significant part of its budget unused and hundreds of important decisions unmade. Last year, the State Department spent just 79% of the money that Congress authorized for the conduct of foreign affairs, the lowest such level in at least 15 years and well down from the 93% spent in the final year of the Obama administration, according to an analysis of data from the Office of Management and Budget. And now there are hiring and promotion freezes that have left large sums unspent, as well as Mr. Tillerson's refusal to delegate spending decisions. Apparently, the department has a backlog of more than 1,400 official requests for Mr. Tillerson to sign off on, according to a former senior diplomat who left the department. They also say Rex never answered phone calls. Rex didn't do, he presided over 30% cuts in the State Department's budget. That money was being poured into the Pentagon, and that the Pentagon was supposed to transfer the money to state, and Rex Tillerson didn't even want the money, or he wasn't fighting for the money. He was like, oh, just, don't send, and hollowing out the State Department, and calling the president a moron, saying that, and then the president tweets at Rex, they're trying to set up a meeting with North Korea is a waste of time. So far we've gone through a national security advisor who's pled guilty, a chief of staff, a couple of chief of staffs. I think Kelly's about to go too. I really do. I think that, Trump and Kelly are at it. You got a chief strategist gone. You got the press secretary gone, 2 White House communications director, a secretary of Health and Human Services, and now the secretary of state. And none of them were any good at their jobs to begin with. They say Tillerson's tenure was a reign of poor oversight over the State Department. He failed to quickly pick a trusted team of leaders. He left many critical departments without direction and paralyzed crucial decision-making in the department. He approved one global conclave in Washington 8 days before the event was to start, ensuring that few leaders from around the world were able to attend. He rarely sat for comprehensive briefings with his top diplomats. He failed to consult the State Department's experts on countries he was visiting. Foreign diplomats, starting with the British and the French, said Mr. Tillerson never returns phone calls. He doesn't set up meetings with much advance warning with his counterparts, and they can't, schedule these meetings. He said he's never had any strategic dialogue with, nuclear weapons powers like Pakistan. He had a meeting on the calendar, and he ended that meeting without explanation. His lone top aide has also resigned alongside of him today. I mean, this is unbelievable. And it's like the president of the United States can't do what Saddam Hussein did, which was take all his cabinet members and march them out into the back of the room in public and then take them to another room and execute them. Trump can't do that. So he just fires them all. He hires the worst people. I mean, come on, Betsy DeVos. Did you see that? I mean, we played a clip. She had no idea what goes on in schools. She had no idea why her Michigan, her beloved Michigan, her home state, is doing so poorly in the field of education. And it's because she took the money out of the public schools and put it into private schools and left like one high school open. I mean, it's a nightmare. These kids are underperforming on grade level tests. And she said, maybe I should visit the underperforming. I intentionally didn't go there. I don't want to visit underperforming. I don't want to know. What is this?
To speak to Randi, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
Randi Rhodes. Air Force.
Herky Jerky has a screaming case of March Madness, so let the games begin. Try Herky Jerky's delicious game jerky and meat sticks. All Herky Jerky staples for more than 25 years. They're talking about their famous buffalo, elk, and venison, which contains less fat and carbs than beef. And because theirs are farm-raised and grass-fed, they don't have that woodsy taste like some of the other kinds. If you've never had buffalo, elk, or venison meat, it's time to give it a try. They're healthy, they are tasty, and this month, all of the game jerky packs are $5 off. The venison sticks come in hot and mild, and they were once voted best in the country at a major food show on the West Coast, and from that point on, it's been their best-selling item. Whether you're already a fan of game meat or have never tried it, now's the time to take advantage of the savings. $5 off all month long and free shipping with 2 packs or more of anything in the store, including the beef, the bacon, and the turkey, too. No promo code needed. Just try some today. Go to herkyjerky.com.
Whether you're listening to me, Mark Levine, each Monday and Wednesday,
or me, Leslie Marshall, each Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday,
you can hear us 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Progressive Voices Network.
Here's a sample of what you'll hear.
Where I am right now is California, and the president's attorney general, Jeff Sessions, has announced that he has a lawsuit over sanctuary cities. In California, in areas where there's high crime, let's take Oakland, there are think tanks, even conservative think tanks, that found the overwhelming majority of crimes committed are by born, bred, and raised Americans here in the good old USA, not undocumented. This is what they don't want on the right, folks. They don't want undocumented workers or their children, who nobody can blame a majority feels should have a pathway to citizenship, to vote, because they'll vote for Democrats, and Republicans don't want that. I've seen tweets that say that, California is bankrupt and people are leaving California in droves, and those aren't the facts. So let me just give you some facts, okay? In this state of California, under the leadership of Governor Jerry Brown, whether you like him or not, or like Democrats or not, in this very blue state, and we are the world's 6th largest economy. We're like our own country within a country. In addition to that, right now, we have a surplus. So for people that say California's broke and liberals run it to the ground, poo-poo. The governor says this is a political stunt, and I agree.
Is completely unprecedented for the chief law enforcement of the United States to come out here and engage in a political stunt, make wild accusations, many of which are based on outright lies. That's unusual. And particularly a fellow coming from Alabama talking to us about secession and protecting the human and civil rights. I do think this is pure red meat for the base, And I would assume, but this is pure speculation, that Jeff thinks that Donald will be happier with him, and I'm sure Donald will be tweeting his joy at this.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Anybody remember this?
It shows the moment at which Saddam Hussein, the actual moment at which Saddam Hussein seized power in Iraq for himself. There's the Central Committee of the Ba'ath Party, perhaps 100 people, are sitting in a very formal array in a conference room. And Saddam Hussein is chairing them from a podium, smoking a large cigar. And suddenly, without warning to anyone, in is dragged between two guards and in chains, a broken man, a man who is obviously physically and mentally been utterly destroyed. His personality has been evacuated. Ugh. And prodded a bit, he stumbles through a confession that implicates himself and others in a plot to destroy the Iraqi Republic, to remove the regime of the Ba'ath Party, and to ruin the Iraqi revolution, the counter-revolution. Having confessed for himself and having begged to be executed for his crimes, and having been reduced to a state of complete abjection, the man then says, the following members of this Central Committee were with me in this plot, and he begins to read out their names. Slowly. And as this happens, you can see it, the guards move every time a name is mentioned, and they grab the member of the Central Committee and lead him out of the door. And after about a dozen of these, there's panic. Sheer animal panic starts to spread among those who haven't yet been named, and in the hope that they're not going to be, they start screaming and jumping up and saying, "Glory to Saddam Hussein, our leader, all praise to him, the sun, the moon, the stars of Iraq," praying that it won't be them who are called next. Nothing makes any difference. The harvest just goes on randomly. They're taken off the chessboard and taken out until half of them are gone, and the rest are just limp and done for, and almost dying with relief that it wasn't them. It's the most extraordinary live show of a real, for keeps, political purge that you'll ever see. And then there's the second half, where the surviving half are told to go out in the yard and are given guns and are told to shoot the convicted half. Oh, God. Now they're in the plot. Now they are cemented to the leadership. Now, Kanan Makir in his book says correctly, he says, Hitler wouldn't have thought of that. Stalin didn't even think of that, and he thought about these things a lot, about how to get one member of the Central Committee to betray another member and keep them all guessing so that you're the ultimate beneficiary. But this, and it's often, I think, very, very, very hard for people who live in civilized countries, democratic countries, to understand what it would be like to live even a day under a regime that was like this.
Well, now I know. Now I know. Yeah, this is chaos. This is turning one person against another person. This is playing, one cabinet member against another cabinet member. I mean, this is what Trump says he likes. This is what Trump admires. This is where he learned it. He learned it from, these purges that he goes through. He hires really bad people, and then they do, a really bad job, and then he fires them. But before he fires them, he makes sure that somebody else understands that, the lesson to be learned here is if you don't pledge complete and utter loyalty to me, you're next. Now, the only thing that's missing is that, he puts a gun in one guy's hand to, execute the other guy. Instead, he just banishes them. He just removes them from the cabinet. This is This is a horror show that we're watching in this government. This is a horror show, and I'll tell you why Rex Tillerson got the axe today. Now, here's the whole chain of events, right? First, the Republicans in the House of Representatives make this ridiculous announcement after never using their subpoena power, never cross-examining witnesses, never asking for documents from them, never asking to see the direct messages between Junior and Assange, or Junior and WikiLeaks, or forcing testimony from Steve Bannon, or telling Hope Hicks she doesn't have the right to invoke this privilege. There is no and to tell Junior there's no father-son privilege. What's wrong with you? And there's no privilege for a transition team because the executive isn't the executive. He's just a guy waiting. He's the queen, the virgin queen in waiting is what he is. And they don't do any of this. And then yesterday, ahead of the election in Pennsylvania, they say, hey, guess what? We're going to release a 150-page report without including any Democrats. You can't see the 150 pages yet, but just take our word for it. It's 150 pages of nothing. Why does it take 150 pages to say nothing? But that's what they're going to, and they do this ahead of a very must-win election in Pennsylvania. And then in the morning, Donald Trump feels so emboldened that he goes ahead and fires Rex Tillerson at the State Department and puts the CIA director into the State Department and elevates the queen of destruction and torture who destroys records for the CIA, makes her the head of the CIA, where the raw intelligence that collusion did occur, where the raw intelligence that there was a trade of information between the Russians and the Trump campaign happened. They've got the raw intelligence. She'll go in there and what? She's going to destroy this evidence? This is the chain of events. The only thing missing is, look, he's already had the cabinet meetings where you go around the table and you praise the dear leader. I mean, we've seen that much from him, right? Just go ahead and, tinkle on my leg. Go ahead. Tell me how wonderful I am. Praise me. Oh, thank God for a leader like you, Mr. Trump. Thank God for a leader like you, Mr. President. And Mike Pence with his loving bedroom eyes, staring at Trump, staring, never to be the stare cannot be broken. He would fall to pieces. Oh, my God. It's just like the purge that you see, going on in third world countries. It's just like that purge. Rex Tillerson, he hollows out the State Department for him. He does a really bad job. Now and they call each other names, behind each other's back because they hate each other. I mean, this is just, he only brought Rex Tillerson in because it looked like he knew the best people, right? He was going to pick the CEO of ExxonMobil. That's what he was going to do. And the guy did a terrible job, which is what we said. We said, being a CEO of a corporation and running a diplomacy outfit like the State Department and sitting on the wall and doing the counterintelligence work and having meetings with your allies and all these things and being able to, keep NATO aligned and out. Now, let me tell you why Rex Tillerson got fired just this morning. First of all, he found out on Twitter because the President of the United States, when push comes to shove, he's a coward, just like Saddam Hussein was a coward. Saddam Hussein died with terror in his eyes. We found him in a hole in the ground in some farm in Tikrit, hiding. His sons were killed and brought out on gurneys as a message to him. It was disgusting what went on between the Bush administration and the Saddam Husseins of the world. I mean, they had a family squabble that we all paid for. Killing the kids and putting the kids out on the gurney and letting the whole world see what we did to your sons and then chasing him out of Dodge and finding him in a hole because he was a coward to begin with. Trump's a coward too. He couldn't fire Rex Tillerson to his face. Hell no. He fired him over Twitter. Rex Tillerson's father had died, and Rex Tillerson still continued on his mission to Africa and missed his father's funeral, apparently. And then he's on a plane, probably sleeping, coming back, and Trump fires him over with a tweet. Why? Because Trump read the same article that I read in the New York Times yesterday. That's why. Tillerson was in Cape Verde. He was in Africa, and he actually heard Theresa May, yesterday. Theresa May, we played this for you yesterday, went in front of the British House and said to them, there's a police. Well, she didn't mention the police officer, but there's a police officer. There's a Russian who defected and has been helping the intelligence community. It is believed that this man, Sergei Skriplik, and his daughter Yulia were poisoned by Vladimir Vladimir Putin because Sergei might have been a contact. This is what what we're hearing rumors of. I can't prove this yet, and nobody probably can right now. That he was a contact for Christopher Steele for the dossier. And Vlad is killing all his opponents. He's running around killing people. And so she asked for an autopsy, and they found a nerve agent that is only in the hands of a very small amount of people in the world, and that Vladimir Putin is one of them. Well, I don't know if he's the only one. Seems like from what she said yesterday that he is, and that there's only they're down to two choices. Either Vladimir did this himself, ordered it, or he's lost control of his nerve agents, and he's in violation of the Chemical Biological Weapons Treaty. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons is a watchdog agency, and they are looking into the attack as well. Anyway, he heard this. Rex.
As is normal, the Council was updated on the assessment and intelligence picture, as well as the state of the investigation. It is now clear that Mr. Skripal and his daughter were poisoned with a military-grade nerve agent of a type developed by Russia. This is part of a group of nerve agents known as Novichok. Based on the positive identification of this chemical agent by world-leading experts at the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory at Porton Down, our knowledge that Russia has previously produced this agent and would still be capable of doing so, Russia's record of conducting state-sponsored assassinations, and our assessment that Russia views some defectors as legitimate targets for assassinations, the government has concluded that it is highly likely that Russia was responsible for the act against Sergei and Yulia Skripal. Mr. Speaker, there are therefore only two plausible explanations for what happened in Salisbury on the 4th of March. Either this was a direct act by the Russian state against our country, or the Russian government lost control of its potentially catastrophically damaging nerve agent and allowed it to get into the hands of others.
So she goes on, she makes this floor speech, and it's pretty devastating. Rex Tillerson hears it, and he actually talks to the New York Times because he's got reporters on his freaking plane, right? And so he says the poisoning of a former Russian spy in Britain is an egregious act. It appears that it clearly came from Russia. I've become extremely concerned about Russia, Mr. Tillerson said in the interview. We spent most of last year investing a lot into attempts to work together, to solve problems, to address differences. And quite frankly, after a year, we didn't get very far. Instead, what we've seen is a pivot on their part to be more aggressive. And this is very, very concerning to me and others, that there seems to be a certain unleashing of activity, that we don't fully understand what the objective behind that is. And if in fact this attack is in the UK is the work of the Russian government, this is a pretty serious action. He said the nerve agent used in the attack is only in the hands of a very, very limited number of parties. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons is also looking into the attack. So then the reporters asked him, wouldn't this prompt a response from NATO? Because Britain is our special ally, right? And isn't it true that the United States is legally obligated to defend it if Britain came under attack? And Tillerson said, it certainly will trigger a response. I'll leave it at that. That is why Rex Tillerson was let go today. Because remember, he's done a terrible job the whole time. He has called the president an effing moron. He was on the Sunday shows not denying that he called the president an effing moron. Okay? He has prevented us from protecting ourselves against further Russian attacks by not spending any of the money allocated to prevent further Russian attacks. Not one Russian speaker has been hired to sit in the global, on that global commission that we have in a basement somewhere in an old World War II building. But Theresa May is freaking pissed that Sergei Skripal, an informant for Britain's Foreign Intelligence Service, and his daughter, and a police officer, and 38 others. Now, most of the 38 others have been let go, but these 3 have been hospitalized and are in serious condition. Tillerson said it's almost beyond comprehension that an organized state would do something like that. A non-state actor I could understand. A state actor, I can't understand why anybody would take such an action. Really, such a big brain, Rex. You're such a big, big brain. You can't figure out why he's killing all the people that may have cooperated to give information to the United States about Russian interference. You can't. And there's another dead Russian today also, in exile. He was found dead in his house in London. You can't understand why all these Russians are showing up dead? I thought you understood that we need to legally respond under NATO to the British who are saying, this would be an act of war. It would be. And our House of Representatives, nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. Move along.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit RandiRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
It's Tuesday, March 13, 2018.
Even if you take the highest possible estimate of costs and the lowest possible estimate of benefits are still well over double what the costs were.
Trump doesn't want you to know his own report shows the benefits of environmental regulations far outweigh the costs. Colorado Republicans kill bill prioritizing public health in oil and gas development. Interior Secretary pulls lands in his own state from oil and gas auction. Plus,
it's just one after the other.
The third major storm in the Northeast in 10 days underscores the need to invest in electric grid resilience.
All of those needs and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
And we have 4 to 9 inches of global warming hoax piling up outside. Thanks, China.
Yep, thanks. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I guess it's not unheard of, but man, this is the third nor'easter about to hit the East Coast in, a week or two?
Yes, in less than 2 weeks. And that is likely to bring even more power outages, even as hundreds of thousands of customers already remain without electricity after the previous 2 storms. Back-to-back storms, as you mentioned, are rare but not unheard of for the region. But the impacts, with little time for recovery in between, underscore what climate scientists have been warning about for years. Because of the documented increase in heavy precipitation events in the United States since 1950, we need to invest in infrastructure like the electric grid. It needs to be hardened for resilience because of the increase in extreme weather events due to global warming.
And this isn't just back-to-back storms. This is back-to-back storms in the Northeast.
And intense ones at that.
Yep.
The benefits of regulations far outweigh their costs, as much as 7 times their cost, especially environmental regulations. That's the conclusion of a new report that was quietly released by President Trump's own Office of Management and Budget, which found that unequivocally, at a minimum, even when using the highest possible estimates of cost, major regulations like the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act return more than double their cost in benefits to the American people. According to David Roberts of Vox on a recent broadcast, Trump's rollbacks of major environmental regulations to reduce compliance costs for corporations actually amount to a pollution tax of sorts on everyday Americans.
Air quality regulations are a downward redistribution of income. That's the right way to think about them. It's taking income out of corporate pockets and putting it into the pockets of average people who have to breathe the air. And the reversing or getting rid of these regulations is an upward income redistribution. You're taking money out of the pockets of ordinary people in the form of health costs and missed work and all the rest of it, and you're putting it in the pockets of industrialists.
So, as it turns out, when Donald Trump and Scott Pruitt and these guys all say cutting regulations is good for the economy, turns out they're lying, and their own report from their own administration now shows it?
Yep.
Imagine that.
Meanwhile, in Colorado, after heavy lobbying from the oil and gas industry, Republican lawmakers in the state legislature last week killed proposed legislation that would have required Colorado state regulators of the oil and gas industry to prioritize public safety and to treat protection of public health and the environment as a precondition before allowing further encroachment of drilling operations inside city limits and near homes and schools.
Well, we'd hate to do that.
In Utah, in the fight to save Bears Ears National Monument, internal Interior Department emails obtained in a lawsuit by the New York Times show that oil and gas were the primary motivation behind the Trump administration's decision to shrink the monument. The Trump administration had claimed early last year that its so-called monument review had no predetermined outcomes, but the internal documents tell a different story, showing that long before the review was launched, Interior Department officials were primarily focused on oil and gas exploration. Native American tribes have vowed to sue over Trump's plans to cut nearly 90% of the monument in southeastern Utah. Finally, some good news, at least for folks in Montana. Speaking of Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, he has unexpectedly withdrawn more than 17,000 acres of the public's lands from consideration for an auction of leases to the oil and natural gas industry. Local and national environmental groups had tried to stop the sale, arguing drilling in these areas would harm the Yellowstone River and other sensitive regions. Zinke said that the department needed to study the area more before putting it up for auction. I'm sure it's purely coincidental that the protected lands happen to be located in Zinke's home state,
where he's planning to run for governor. So he takes all this public land out of our national park so that it can be sold, given away to oil and gas interests. But in his own home state, he protects public land from those very same oil and gas interests.
Funny that.
For much more on all of these reports and the ones we couldn't get to, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us, follow us, and share us worldwide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
This land is your land, and this land is my land. From the California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me.
You ever see the story where it's 1999, I'm on Meet the Press, a show now headed by Sleepy Eyes Chuck Todd. He's a sleeping son of a bitch, I'll tell you.
How'd that work out for you? Trump went all in for Rick Sack. He went all in for Rick Saccone, and now he's all out. Oh, the loyalty, the one-way street that is the Donald Trump. It's unbelievable. So, it's not like Rick Sack, tried to distance himself. The sack was more of Trump's ass than his own. So just got to say, Rick Saccone, here was his, parting words.
They said that the other side is energized. Let me tell you, they're energized for hate for our president. I've talked to so many of these on the left, and they have a hatred for our president. I tell you, many of them have a hatred for our country. And I'll tell you some more. My wife and I saw it again today. They have a hatred for God. It's amazing.
Do you really think your opponents hate God?
Oh, come on.
That's what you said last night.
So a lot of people have come up to me. If you've seen some of the vile comments I get on Twitter and Facebook, and people come up to me and told me to take my religion and go away and all those kinds of things. Really, really hateful comments. And that affects you.
Poor Rick Sack. Poor Rick Sack. It affected him. So what happened? Isn't he cute?
Well, it took a little longer than we thought, but we did it.
Yay! Let's gloat. Let's gloat, everybody.
You did it. You did it. You did it. I see so many great friends out here. 4 months ago, right after we won the Democratic nomination, before we ever even had a chance to open an office, the grassroots leaders that are in this room tonight came to us and they said, print us something. Print anything so we can get out there and start canvassing. They said, get going, they said. I'm a Pennsylvania Democrat, a proud Western Pennsylvania Democrat. This is the party of my grandfather. He believed in FDR. He taught us all. He taught us all that people have a right to know that their government walks on their side of the street. What that means is I'll work on the problems our people face, secure their jobs and pensions, protect their family, and I will work with anyone to do that.
Steelworkers for Lamb. Don't you love that? I love that. We won. We won. It was really stinking close. Oh, my God, you bastards. Thank you very much, Western Pennsylvania. I guess Trump's base in Appalachia, and by base, I mean the people he steps on, that $1.50 you got in your tax cut, if you got one at all, it just, it wasn't enough. It just wasn't. So while his base was abandoning him in Appalachia, of course, Trump was doing what Trump does. He was with his only real base in Beverly Hills, raising money. Because, he pays for his own stuff. You know that, right? That's why he goes to fundraisers in Beverly Hills as Appalachia. Oh, God, he is so tone deaf. Just unbelievable. And, it is very close. Obviously, it looks like Conor Lamb has, ended March out with a lamb, like we said, with about 641 votes. But remember, this district in Pennsylvania, this was, what's his name? I almost said Ryan Murphy. Forgive me, Ryan. Forgive me. Ryan Murphy is a brilliant television producer. But Tim Murphy, he was a guy, devout, religious guy, telling every woman how abortion, was sin and it was bad. And he was so pro-life and he was just so all about the little fetus. The little child is the fetus is a child, it's that you should name it and you should swaddle it somehow in your amniotic sac. And of course, what happened to him was he told his mistress. He told his mistress to have an abortion after he knocked her up. Oh, virgin bride there. And people, they made him resign. They made him resign in shame. He left and, shame. So then you have this Rick Saccone guy go, they hate God is what it, they hate. No, they hate the hypocrisy, okay, is what it is. And they hate that they trusted somebody. This is a district that voted for Donald Trump by a 20 percentage point margin. Just anybody that would listen to them, anybody that would hear them, anybody that would see them, anybody that would try to understand what it's like to live in Western Pennsylvania, in Southern Ohio, in West Virginia, and what they have all found out is that by being Trump's base, they are the thing he steps on and that he used them. Some of the people interviewed today said, well, you voted for Trump. Now, why are you voting for Conor Lamb? And they said, because Trump's an asshole. That is what was printed in the paper, just saying. Because he's an asshole. So thanks for that rally, Mr. President. Honestly, I don't think Conor Lamb could have done it without you. I really don't. I don't think he could have done it without you giving them, 75 minutes of pure batshit crazy. About yourself, nothing about them, about how you hate the TV. like angry old grandpa. That's what you were, just yelling at sleepy-eyed Chuck Todd, son of a bitch, and talking about you and your predictive, prowess. And it's just unbelievable. And he called Conor Lamb, Lamb the Sham. Remember that?
Conor Lamb the Sham, right? Lamb the Sham. He's trying to act like a Republican, so he won't give me one vote. Look, I don't know him. Looks like a nice guy. I hear he's nice looking. I think I'm better looking than him. I do.
Just another meaningless lie.
And he's slightly younger than me. Slightly.
I get it's a joke.
There's a lot there to parse, Mr. Lamb. Why do you think that Lamb the Sham didn't take hold?
It didn't take off.
Well, I don't know. I mean, just apart from that, there was a lot of foolishness in this election and a lot of really cartoonish campaigning. And I think by the time of the president's visit last weekend, people were kind of tired of that entire approach. I mean, I had people, especially elderly people, coming up to me almost every day and just saying, man, I hate those ads against you. It's not right. It's not worthy of us. And so I think there was just a little bit of burnout on that type of campaigning before the president ever got here.
And do you think the president is better looking than you?
No, you didn't.
I really have no opinion on that one.
Okay, so we just elected a humorless guy. All right, but he's cute. And he's a Democrat. What can I tell you? But it didn't work. It never took off. The whole Lamb the Sham and Saccone on his very last day campaigning. People hate God. That's what they hate God. They hate him. Is what it is. They hate God. No, they hated Trump. They hate Trump. They think that Trump was a complete farce. They tried, when you're living desperately, you try desperate things. And so this particular district gave Trump, a nod, said, let's try him out. He's, unorthodox. He's very weird. He doesn't believe what we believe in, but let's see what he believes in, and let's see if he believes in anything. And if he does he believe in us? Does he believe in the forgotten man? Does he believe in our chance? Does he believe in fixing things? And the answer is no, clearly. He was, in Beverly Hills fundraising as this was. And, of course, the Republicans licking their various wounds and body parts today.
He said he was pro-gun. He said he was pro-coal. He said he was personally pro-life. He was a Republican in name, but I can promise you he will vote like a Democrat in Congress.
So Rick Saccone was selling the same message.
Yeah,
and this thing is a dead heat. Why?
Why?
That's right. Because of the pro-union aspect, I think, of Conor Lamb. He was very pro-union. This is a union-heavy district. So you had a Republican in name versus a Republican in truth. But, Bill, I want to caution extrapolating any national consensus from this of what the midterms will look like. Because Conor Lamb, really important to point this out, he did not run in a primary. He was appointed by local committeemen in a vote at the local level, not among voters. There was no primary challenge from the left. You look across the country, moderate Democrats are being run out by their voters. You look at Dianne Feinstein not even getting the endorsement of her party. Dan Lipinski, Illinois congressman, who is within 2 points of being beat by a progressive challenger. State of Georgia, the moderate candidate has not received one national endorsement because moderate Democrats are not what the Democratic voters want.
So this is the talking point, okay? He ran as a Republican because personally, he says, his personal view is he would never have an abortion. That is his personal view. He would never have one, but he would never take away, a woman's right to choose whether she would. So, this is their talking point. And Paul Ryan, they're all reading from the same hymnal.
I don't know that there's a big surprise. Win or lose, as you say, it's too soon to say what's going to happen. I think the candidate that's going to win this race is the candidate that ran as a pro-life, pro-gun, anti-Nancy Pelosi conservative. That's the candidate that's going to win this race. So this is something that you're not going to see repeated because they didn't have a primary. They were able to pick a candidate who could run as a conservative, who ran against the minority leader, who ran on a conservative agenda. You will have primaries in all these other races, and the primaries bring them to the left. So
He's licking his wounds, and if he could,
Clear for takeoff. The Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com.
Mitchell Gold and Bob Williams introduces its Spring 2018 home collection of classic, modern, and new traditional silhouettes in a vivid spectrum of colors, textures, patterns, and prints. The new spring collection features a modern slant with clean-lined and comfortable styles that pay tribute to iconic American designs from the mid-century to the late 1970s. Experience the new collection in comfort at a signature store near you, or peruse the entire collection in e-catalog online. Find a store and shop online at mgbwhome.com. Join the Mitchell Gold and Bob Williams Comfort Club, a customer loyalty program that offers you 20% savings every day with exclusive access to special member-only offers and services like complimentary in-home design. It's free. It's easy to join. Sign up now. Start saving today at a Mitchell Gold and Bob Williams signature store near you or online at mgbwhome.com.
Hey everybody, it's Brett from the Randi Rhodes Show. Independent media is the future, and Randi's leading the way. And it's ironic, the more freedom she gained, the more expensive it got. It's crucial now, more than ever, to keep this show pure and free of corporate influence so Randi can tell the hard truths. The first step to change is an unbiased media, and for that, we need your help. So please, go to randirhodes.com/support and subscribe, you bastards.
Hello, I'm Casey Hobbs.
And I'm Shane Mason, and we're the hosts of Nurse Talk Radio.
Here's what we're talking about this week. On another note, I wanted to get to, you had a very interesting haircut recently.
I did.
And I would love for you to tell that story.
Well, I'll tell you what, I didn't know whether to be amused, angry, offended.
Yes, or insulted or whatever.
Many people who know me know I'm not a woman who sits a lot of time in a hairstylist chair anyway. But I went because I finally decided I had butchered my own bangs enough. And so she's cutting away. She's got the scissors and the clippers, and she leans over into my ear and whispers, "You know, we need to cut a little more off the back there. You don't want to have a gay hairstyle."
Because God only knows what would happen if you had a gay hairstyle
oh my God,
there in Denver.
We don't have what in the heck?
I thought it would have been the opposite. She cut too much, you'd have gay hair. Well, the laughter here is good, but we've got one more quick question before we go.
Sure.
The national single-payer healthcare movement looks good. There's lots of things happening. Talk about Keith Ellison sponsoring SB 676.
This is really wonderful news. Keith Ellison, the deputy chair of the DNC, but also terrific congressman from the state of Minnesota, has agreed to be the new lead sponsor of H.R. 676 on the House side. And this is really wonderful news for the single-payer Medicare for All movement. Keith Ellison has been a single-payer supporter his entire time in Congress. He has been just a wonderful advocate for single-payer.
Thanks for listening. You can find more information about these topics at nursetalksite.com or nationalnursesunited.org.
This podcast is powered by National Nurses United, the nation's largest union for registered nurses.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
They didn't have a primary. They were able to pick a candidate who could run as a conservative, who ran against the minority leader, who ran on a conservative agenda. You will have primaries in all these other races, and the primaries bring them to the left. So I just don't think that this is something they're going to be able to see a repeat of.
Okay. So running as a pro-union guy is suddenly, just far right is what it is. Suddenly running to protect people's pensions is, suddenly a far right issue. Having a personal feeling about, as a man, you would never have an abortion, which I applaud. If you're a man and you don't want to ever have an abortion, say so. Speak out. I'm having one right now. As you know, I have them daily. I just, sometimes I let the pregnancy go a few days, and then I have it. Wait, I'm going to skip a few days, and I'm going to wait, and then I'm going to have a late term one. On the air. No, I mean, honestly, they just don't know what to say about this. This should have been a lock. They spent $10 million, the Republicans did, on Rick Sack. They spent $10 million on a really bad candidate who couldn't fundraise himself out of a paper bag. They spent $10 million on a candidate who said, the reason why you're voting against me is because you hate God. Did you learn nothing from Roy Moore? I mean, honestly, in Alabama, we now have Doug Jones as a sitting U.S. senator, a Democratic senator from Alabama. Paul, what's it gonna take? And, by the way, I have to tell you, Conor Lamb had a few things to say about, where he stands on Nancy Pelosi and Paul Ryan.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't presume to give lessons to people outside the district. I think every district is pretty different.
That's the thing.
Like I said, hard work really pays off. I think that in this environment, no offense to all my friends who make their living on TV, campaigning in real life in small rooms, door to door, person to person, it works, and I learned a lot doing it, and I think that helped our campaign an awful lot, and I would advise anybody, no matter where they are, to do that.
Conor, it's Willie Geist. Congratulations on your apparent win, which we're calling it here at NBC. You made the case on the campaign trail over the last several months that there needs to be new leadership in Washington. And you said so at the top of both parties. You said it wasn't personal toward Nancy Pelosi, but you believed it was a new day in Washington. So when you arrive in Washington, assume you do win this election, do you think Nancy Pelosi should go?
Well, I don't know that we're there yet. I mean, my understanding is there wouldn't be a leadership vote this year, and in this year of all years, we've got a couple more elections to go for me before we'd ever get there. However, yes, I have said, and I continue to say, that I think we need new leadership at the top of both parties in the House, and so I'd like to see someone besides Nancy Pelosi run, and that's who I would support. But I definitely would like to see a different leader than Paul Ryan on the other side.
What is it about Nancy Pelosi specifically that you believe makes her unqualified to do the job, or that at least she should go?
Well, it's nothing personal. I just think that the leadership of both parties have presided over a time when we've had more and more gridlock and fewer important things getting done. And I always learn that responsibility starts at the top. So I think we need to sweep some new people in there.
You bastard. Oh, you Republican bastard. Yeah, I mean, everybody was, like, why do you think Nancy Pelosi has to go? Well, I said Paul Ryan, too. I think the leadership in both, the Democratic and the Republican Party, I think that they have, created gridlock and, hatred, and they spew and they can't get along. And so perhaps it's time to put two new people in the leadership position. However, there will not be a vote on who the Democratic leader of the House should be this year. There probably won't be one. I'll tell you who's going to get primaried. I mean, they're out there going, well, he never would have won in this conservative district as a Democrat because the left would have primaried. This is so ridiculous. I'll tell you who's going to get primaried. Donald Trump's going to get primaried. The sitting president, the current president, the incumbent president is going to see somebody from the Republican Party run in a primary against Donald Trump should he make it to 2020. Should he make it? I mean, there's no question in my mind that the Republicans are going to get even with this dude. They can't stand him, and now they're losing. I mean, this is just a precursor. They lost Alabama. They lost a Senate seat in Alabama, and they chalked that one up to, well, Roy Moore was such a flawed candidate. Flawed? He was a child molester, and the president of the United States freaking endorsed him. I mean, come on. After he endorsed Luther Strange, who lost the primary. And then he moved on to, I'll endorse a child molester. Just vote Roy Moore. Vote for Roy Moore. Kellyanne Conway is now being investigated for violations of the Hatch Act because she went on the TV and told people in Alabama, vote for Roy Moore. And she's not supposed to do that from the official position of the briefing room as a member of the White House. And she did it anyway because this is how desperate they were to keep Alabama. And Alabama was close. Freaking Bama. And they lost it. They lost Alabama. So now they've lost, another district, a House district in Western Pennsylvania. It's number 18, which, it's partly the suburbs of Pittsburgh and partly. And I've lived there. So don't tell me I don't know. Not in Western Pennsylvania, just in Appalachia. So I kind of get it. But people are just so sick of it. They're so sick of it. They voted for this guy because they thought he was the better man. Not everybody is so freaking partisan that they can't see that this man who is currently headed, the leader of the Republican Party, Donald Trump, is an asshole. And that whatever he says is not just a lie, but it's beyond that. It's meaningless. It doesn't matter what he says. He can say he's for, an assault weapons ban on Monday. On Tuesday, he says he's for raising the age. And then on Wednesday, he has a meeting with the NRA. And by Thursday, he doesn't want any new gun laws. And you know what? The kids in our country, they want new gun laws. And did you see? This is what democracy looks like today, okay? I hate to tell them, but this is what democracy looks like when people vote for the best candidate, not the flawed candidate because it's got an R after its name. When people can go to the polls after the president... I sort of thought that, Rick Sack would lose this election in PA because he saw, Donald... Well, the whole place, the whole district saw Donald Trump Jr. in a hairnet. And I thought that was a little, off-putting. Maybe that's why he lost. But no, Donald Trump goes there and he talks to these people who are looking for leadership, who are looking for solutions to difficult problems like poverty, a dearth of jobs, a complete and utter move toward automation that took their jobs first and then second, that the jobs just moved. They were looking for some answers. And what does Donald Trump do? He did everything he could ahead of this election. He passed a tax cut, their $1.50 didn't move them. Steel tariffs for steel country didn't move them. Nothing, because they all know it's crap. They all know it's nothing. Everybody gets it. And then this man shows up and he's completely unhinged and talks for 75 minutes about himself, calling the media fake and poisonous and sons of bitches and these people know, fake media. It's ridiculous. They want solutions. They want to see something happen. So they voted for the best candidate. And I got news for you. This whole thing, with the guns thing, the kids are sick of it. They're sick of the NRA. They're sick of it. They're sick of lobbyists making the law instead of representatives representing the district. That's why Conor Lamb won. He is from there. He talks the way that they talk. He was pragmatic and humorless. And so they voted for him because he seemed like a stable person. And that's what we're down to in this country, just stability. The kids, 3,000 schools today had walkouts at 10 o'clock this morning. 3,000 schools across this country. That was unprecedented in American history, what you saw this morning. That was nationally organized walkouts by 17 and 16 and 15-year-old children who have had enough of being gunned down, in America. They've had it. They're sick of it. They went out at 10 o'clock this morning and they sat there with fists in the air and signs in the air and sat in silence for 17 minutes. You know how hard it is for a teenager to sit still for 17 minutes, let alone not talk or tweet or text or, play Candy Crush? Do you have any idea what it took for the boys not to play, Worlds of War? Oh, my God, they did it. And they did it on Pennsylvania Avenue, right in front of the White House. And they planned to march later to the Capitol, which they did. And then you have all these other schools. You had universities, you had middle schools, you had high schools, all walking out today. 3,000 schools across this country. That is what democracy looks like. They are exercising freedom of assembly. Remember that one? Or are we only ever going to talk about number 2? Which has been decided like it's number 2. It was a shitty decision, that Heller decision. Up until 2008 and the Heller decision that Antonin wrote, we actually held as a country from 17 and 91, when we got the Bill of Rights, all the way till 2008, that there was no individual right to keep and bear arms unless it had to do with service in the militia. And we have a militia. It's called the National Guard. And they choose who they want to be part of them now, and only if you're MOS, only if you're AFSC, your job description includes using a gun to do your job. Do you get a gun? And then You put it in the armory. You don't get to take it home. Just saying. I think we solved that problem a long time ago, and that's why the NRA went crazy. And they said, we got to go to the Supreme Court. We got to go to the Supreme Court. There is no, there's no need for anybody to have a gun. We need an interpretation, and we got the right makeup of the Supreme Court right now to do it. Bring this case. Bring this case. Who's Heller? Heller is a police officer from D.C. That's who he is, a police officer. And they went all the way to the Supreme Court because he said he had the right to have a gun. He had a right to have a gun. And Antonin, before he died, decided, all right. You can't, you can't say you can have any gun. Can't say you can have an AR. Can't say you can have an AK. Can't do it. Even I can't do that. But what I can do is interpret the Second Amendment to mean, all of a sudden, that individuals have the right to a handgun or something. But for all those 1791 to 2008, no, never decided that way. Never, ever came down on the individual right. No, it came down on militia service. That's what the Second Amendment had always been interpreted to mean. This is why we were able to ban Tommy guns and machine guns and all kinds of guns. And that's why the assault weapons ban in 1994 was constitutional. Duh! Unreal. So these kids know this. This is a learning experience for us. For them, they learned it. They taught them this. This is why Parkland High School is such a great high school. They have advanced placement journalism classes and advanced placement social studies classes and advanced placement government classes. These are the kids that are leading this, and they also know how to tweet. Oh, my God. Yeah, and they have never spent a day in school in their lives without the threat of gun violence in the back of their minds. You know, the kids who went to Columbine High School, they walked out today too. Now think of this. In 1999, the kids that walked out of Columbine High School today to show, unity with the kids in Parkland, they don't even remember Columbine because it happened in 1999. They weren't even born. They weren't even born yet. Most of them. They were born in like 2000, 2001, right? So they walked out today just to show solidarity, just to say, you know what? I can't walk into the school without, thinking about where's the nearest exit. I can't walk into this school without thinking, where would I go? Where would I hide? What would I do? How do I get out? This is crazy. This is what we put our kids through. And they want Congress to know that many of them will be old enough to vote in the midterm elections. And here in the state, if you're 17 in Florida, you can register to vote if you'll be 18 by November 6th, 2018. And they're doing it. They're doing it. And they're going to throw these bums out. They're going to fire them. They're going to tell them, you're fired. Get out. Donald Trump isn't the only one that can fire, people. Seriously, and they are serious about this. They said, they only want three things. They want three things. They want to increase the age for people to purchase weapons. They want to ban assault-style weapons completely. And they want the police forces to become more demilitarized. They see the escalation. These are smart kids. How many shows have we done about the militarization of the police force and how that is a sign of fascism? Never mind that you've got Trump that's talking about, extrajudicial killings of drug addicts like Duterte does and admiring Putin's ability to poison citizens in the UK. Wow, he's a very tough guy. He's very strong. Putin, he's got like a 98% approval rating. I mean, he's very strong. Oh, please. It's just so sick. So you had today the anniversary. This is sad. I hate to use that word in conjunction with a tragedy, a heinous mass shooting here in Florida. Today was the 1 month anniversary. And that is why they walked out of school today to pay respects. And then that turned into a full-blown rally for their three things. And I can't believe the third thing is the demilitarization of the police force. That just shocks me. It's just so perfectly beautiful. But you had people at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville who were still recovering from the white supremacist rally. You had Wayne State, everybody.
To speak to Randi, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force.
Herky Jerky has a screaming case of March Madness, so let the games begin. Try Herky Jerky's delicious game jerky and meat sticks. All Herky Jerky staples for more than 25 years. They're talking about their famous buffalo, elk, and venison, which contains less fat and carbs than beef. And because theirs are farm-raised and grass-fed, they don't have that woodsy taste like some of the other kinds. If you've never had buffalo, elk, or venison meat, it's time to give it a try. They're healthy, they are tasty, and this month, all of the game jerky packs are $5 off. The venison sticks come in hot and mild, and they were once voted best in the country at a major food show on the West Coast, and from that point on, it's been their best-selling item. Whether you're already a fan of game meat or have never tried it, now's the time to take advantage of the savings. $5 off all month long and free shipping with 2 packs or more of anything in the store, including the beef, the bacon, and the turkey, too. No promo code needed. Just try some today. Go to herkyjerky.com.
Whether you're listening to me, Mark Levine, each Monday and Wednesday,
or me, Leslie Marshall, each Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday,
you can hear us 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Progressive Voices Network.
Here's a sample of what you'll hear. Where I am right now is California, and the president's attorney general, Jeff Sessions, has announced that he has a lawsuit over sanctuary cities. In California, in areas where there's high crime, let's take Oakland, there are think tanks, even conservative think tanks, that found the overwhelming majority of crimes committed are by born, bred, and raised Americans here in the good old USA, not undocumented. This is what they don't want on the right, folks. They don't want undocumented workers or their children, who nobody can blame a majority feels should have a pathway to citizenship, to vote, because they'll vote for Democrats, and Republicans don't want that. I've seen tweets that say that, California is bankrupt and people are leaving California in droves, and those aren't the facts. So let me just give you some facts, okay? In this state of California, under the leadership of Governor Jerry Brown, whether you like him or not, or like Democrats or not, in this very blue state, and we are the world's 6th largest economy. We're like our own country within a country. In addition to that, right now, we have a surplus. So for people that say California's broke and liberals run it to the ground, poo-poo. The governor says this is a political stunt, and I agree.
Is completely unprecedented for the chief law enforcement of the United States to come out here and engage in a political stunt, make wild accusations, many of which are based on outright lies. That's unusual. And particularly a fellow coming from Alabama talking to us about secession and protecting human and civil rights. I do think this is pure red meat for the base, and I would assume, but this is pure speculation, that Jeff thinks that Donald will be happier with him, and I'm sure Donald will be tweeting his joy at this particular performance. But it's not about law enforcement, it's not about justice, and it really demeans the high office to which he has been appointed.
Do you really think that mayors and governors and, state legislators in this state are saying, if you're an undocumented worker, run, and if you've committed a crime, ICE is coming? Now, I know you may say the mayor, made a warning, but you have to remember, a lot of these people have not committed crimes. They're ripping families apart, and that doesn't help the system. It doesn't help our economy. It doesn't help the state. And by the way, having anyone who committed a crime, especially violent, on the loose in California is worse for California, not for the Attorney General, who sits his butt 3,000 miles across the country in Washington, D.C.
Again, that's Mark Levine every Monday and Wednesday.
And Leslie Marshall each Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday.
3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Progressive Voices Network.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Today is brutal. Today is 1 month that my daughter was murdered. I still, my wife and I and my son cannot get over the fact that we are now 1 month into this. Every day since has been a new day for us. Everything we do is now without my daughter. But I must say, these kids, they've been heroes of mine for the past month. They've lifted my spirit. The folks in Parkland, the community has been unbelievable. While I am so disappointed in the legislators, and I do not call them leaders, but the legislators in Washington, I am so optimistic because of these kids. These kids are fighting for their right to be safe, nothing more. And not just in school. They want to be safe when they walk the street. They want to be safe when they go to the movie theater. They want to be safe when they go to the mall. They want to be safe. And if the adults in D.C. can't fix this, they will. You know, I was in D.C. last week, and I'm hearing in the background all of these kids behaving like adults.
Yeah.
But the adults in D.C., it's like a big sandbox. And you have those who run to the left side of the sandbox and those who run to the right. And then you have the president who runs around the sandbox kicking sands in everybody's face. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And that's why, it goes back to the Conor Lamb thing, and the people of Appalachia who voted yesterday. They see that it's a giant sandbox, and they see that there is, a president of the United States who just runs around like the biggest bully in the sandbox, kicking sand into everybody's face, lying to this group, saying, oh, no, Diane, we're foreigners. Hey, Diane, can you put it into Joe's bill? Joe, why don't you talk to... And then the next day saying, no, we're not even for raising the age that you can own a killing machine to 21. And of course, Florida, did a little bit of something here, right? Florida, because Rick Scott is going to run for governor against Bill Nelson, who is nondescript, I would say. Okay, our Democratic Senator Bill Nelson, who has been there for years and years and has failed to distinguish himself, except in my mind, as somebody I do not like. Goes back to, the time when my sister was sick and he was the insurance commissioner and wouldn't sign off on physical therapy for her after 9 hours of back surgery because they said she was terminal. And, she lived another 4 years, but as, a hunched up cripple in a body cast because he wouldn't allow her to get physical therapy. And I will never forget it. So, but Bill Nelson, is going to face Rick Scott. And I swear to God, I could vote for Bill Nelson with a clear conscience over Skeletor, who was responsible for the biggest Medicare fraud in the history of the state of Florida and went on to be our governor. So he needed to do something. He needed to look like a man of action. And so he passed a little bit of something in the Florida. Well, he didn't pass it. He signed it. And what the Florida legislature came up with was some money for mental health, which was good. And then they want to arm teachers and various school, not teachers that teach full time, just part time, and the janitor and, a couple other people, and put more guns in the school, which is just vile. Okay. And the kids don't want it. And the teachers don't want it. The kids are not stupid. They know that nice guys sometimes snap. They know that they don't want more guns in their school. And they know that they don't know what is it that's going to qualify this person or that person to have a gun in their school. You see teachers choking out their kids, you see teachers going in their classrooms and locking themselves in and shooting a gun out the window. I mean, you've seen that since this massacre in Florida. And so the kids aren't stupid. They don't want that. But that's what Florida passed. They said, oh, we'll train these people. We'll train them. And they raised the age. They raised the age to own an assault weapon to the same age as you need to be in Florida to own a handgun, which is 21. The NRA is now suing the state of Florida. Now, in this weird way, I'm happy about this. Why? Because perhaps it will go back to the Supreme Court. Maybe it will. And if it does go back to the Supreme Court, maybe 200 years of stare decisis or precedent will prevail. Maybe. I don't know. But I would like to see it re-heard and re-litigated, because maybe we can all agree again, as we did for practically 200 years, that the Second Amendment is talking about service in a militia that is necessary for the preservation of a free state. and we don't need that anymore, the Second Amendment is actually moot. The First Amendment guarantees you the right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Make sure your fetus is happy. Because the people who hear the word life think it has something to do with your damn fetus. Oh, I just aborted. No, I'm serious, but this is what they think. They think that the fetus, no fetus can beat us. You know, I don't know what their deal is, but they think that the fetus has these rights. So if the fetus has a right to liberty, I guess that means the fetus has a right to live outside of the amniotic fluid and swim with the fishes in a tank somewhere on the government's dime. I'm guessing, because if the fetus decides it doesn't like you as a hostess, then perhaps it does want to go and live in somebody else's uterus. And perhaps we should, as a society, pay for that transfer so that the fetus can pursue its God-given right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. No, it means once you're born, okay? Nobody even knew what a fetus was when the First Amendment was written. Okay, so obviously these kids are trying to say that they're entitled to their freedom to live, their freedom to pursue their dreams, their freedom to be safe in a school. But now the NRA is suing Florida because Rick Scott signed a piece of paper that says that, okay, from that, and we also outlawed bump stocks, which were not used in this crime. And of course, we don't talk about Las Vegas, even though there are still people in the hospital, which you never think about, who are still trying to recover from the awesome velocity of semi-automatic weapon ballistics, okay? I mean, there are people whose entire stomachs were shattered, people who are still trying to live in the hospital, like hundreds of days in the hospital, trying to recover from the place that did use bump stocks. And of course, Nevada didn't ban bump stocks, Florida did, because it's Florida. And of course, we banned something that wasn't used so that Skeletor will have something he can say to the people of Florida as he tries to get Bill Nelson's Senate seat. I swear to God, that's how ridiculous our political discussions have gotten. That's how bad it is. But you have to understand that, you pick a person who looks like your district. You pick a person who understands your district. You pick a person who gels with your district, who your district likes. A person in California isn't going to be right for a person in West Virginia. And a person in West Virginia sure isn't going to be right for a person in New York City. Okay? So the Republicans are just sitting there looking at the midterms now and seeing that we have a Democratic senator from Alabama and that we have a new Democratic district that was never Democratic in their lifetimes that all of a sudden went Democratic last night. And they know that Trump is not going to be able to keep Paul Ryan in the leadership position. They know that the House is going to go. They fear the Senate might go too, because everybody is concluding that Donald Trump is pathetic and that he's poison. This is what Fred Gutenberg, he was on the TV this morning. And he was talking about these kids giving him hope. It's the 1 month anniversary of his daughter's murder. And there are 16 other children. And there are 14 other, minus his daughter, it'd be 13 other children and 3 teachers that are all mourning still and going through the grieving process. And all we've managed to do is say, okay, you got to be 21. Well, that wouldn't, it's so weird because that wouldn't have done anything to stop the shooter in Nevada who was 64. He used a bump stock. Nevada hasn't banned a bump stock. Florida, the shooter was 19 years old. He didn't use a bump stock, and Florida bans bumps. Can you see how you can't have 50 different laws? It's just ridiculous.
It's like I said, the president is the one in the sandbox kicking sand in everyone's face.
So what do you say to him today? He watches cable TV.
I want him to stop. Listen, I have gone on a personal mission to get the NRA out of any role in decision-making on our safety. The fact that the president is publicly embracing them and publicly saying we should all do the same is simply pathetic. And I want him to stop. I want him to act like a leader And when it comes to this issue, and I'm only talking about this issue, he is failing miserably. To go on television with legislators and talk one way, and then meet with the folks of the NRA, who last week put out a video putting targets on legislators and news people's backs, and say he joins with them, is pathetic. It needs to stop. I want the president to take my daughter's murder seriously, not as a political moment, and those of the 16 others. I want him to, I will embrace him if he is the one who gets something done on this issue. The way he has spoken over the past week, he clearly will not be.
No, he clearly will not be, and that is because, I hate to say it, first of all, the NRA, as you know, has a very, very large hold on members of the House and Senate because they will run a hand-picked candidate and put all their money into that hand-picked candidate to primary you if you should even look like you're going to raise the age to own a killing machine to 21. If you even look like you might be interested in getting killing machines off the street, if you even talk about being concerned about young people being unsafe in schools or in malls or in concerts or in Las Vegas on the street or in a movie theater, you know, if you even acknowledge that it's anything but very deranged people, then they will primary you. So that's why they're such cowards. They're really scared of this lobby shop. That's number one. And number two, the Russians have infiltrated the NRA. And it is through this Alexander Torshin and the money that got funneled into the NRA that Trump is controlled by them. You know, the whole Russia thing controls everything that Donald Trump says and does. And there are a good chunk of House members that I think have dirty hands when it comes to the cover-up, at least. I don't know if they were paid. I know that the NRA has commingled funds, that Alexander Torshin is somebody that, the Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee wanted information about. They want to talk to various people inside the NRA. And, of course, they don't have subpoena power, these Democrats. And the Republicans decided to close the Russia investigation, just ahead of the Pennsylvania election, so that maybe some people who were on the fence about whether or not their president was a traitor to this nation would see that the Republicans cleared him with a piece of paper. Of course, what happened last night was just amazing. The Democrats decided that they were going to push on, even without subpoena power, because the minority party cannot issue a subpoena in any committee. Only the majority can issue a subpoena for documents or a subpoena to appear or both. The Democrats have none of that authority, none of that power. So what Adam Schiff did and the Democrats did in the House Intelligence Committee was they released 22 pages of where the investigation actually is. And it's divided into 4 loving sections. I read the whole thing. And Appendix B is the most informative, I think, because, Appendix A is the lines of inquiry, the questions they still have that have never been answered. But Appendix B is all the witnesses that they couldn't call or that wouldn't come or that came and would only answer the questions that they wrote, like Bannon, the ones that they think they need to hold in contempt of Congress for lying to Congress, things that were said publicly, things that were said, that there were no subpoenas issued for Facebook or Twitter or Google or WhatsApp or any of the direct messages from Junior. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And it all goes together because the Russians obviously were always, and one of the lines of inquiry is money laundering. And one of the things that the Democrats want answered is how much money was laundered through the freaking NRA. And they have a list of witnesses that they would like to talk to, starting with Cleta Mitchell at Foley and Lardner, who does all the legal work for the NRA. Just to clarify.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit RandiRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
It's Tuesday, March 13, 2018.
Even if you take the highest possible estimate of costs and the lowest possible estimate of benefits,
benefits are still well over double what the costs were.
Trump doesn't want you to know his own report shows the benefits of environmental regulations far outweigh the costs. Colorado Republicans kill bill prioritizing public health in oil and gas development. Interior Secretary pulls lands in his own state from oil and gas auction. Plus,
it's just one after the other.
The third major storm in the Northeast in 10 days underscores the need to invest in electric grid resilience.
All of those needs and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
And we have 4 to 9 inches of global warming hoax piling up outside. Thanks, China.
Yep, thanks. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I guess it's not unheard of, but man, this is the third nor'easter about to hit the East Coast in, what, a week or two?
Yes, in less than 2 weeks. And that is likely to bring even more power outages, even as hundreds of thousands of customers already remain without electricity after the previous 2 storms. Back-to-back storms, as you mentioned, are rare but not unheard of for the region. But the impacts, with little time for recovery in between, underscore what climate scientists have been warning about for years. Because of the documented increase in heavy precipitation events in the United States since 1950, we need to invest in infrastructure like the electric grid. It needs to be hardened for resilience because of the increase in extreme weather events due to global warming.
And this isn't just back-to-back storms. This is back-to-back-to-back storms in the Northeast.
And intense ones at that.
Yep.
The benefits of regulations far outweigh their costs, as much as 7 times their cost, especially environmental regulations. That's the conclusion of a new report that was quietly released by President Trump's own Office of Management and Budget, which found that unequivocally, at a minimum, even when using the highest possible estimates of cost, major regulations like the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act return more than double their cost in benefits to the American people. According to David Roberts of Vox on a recent broadcast, Trump's rollbacks of major environmental regulations to reduce compliance costs for corporations actually amount to a pollution tax of sorts on everyday Americans.
Air quality regulations are a downward redistribution of income. That's the right way to think about them. It's taking income out of corporate pockets and putting it into the pockets of average people who have to breathe the air. And the reversing or getting rid of these regulations is an upward income redistribution. You're taking money out of the pockets of ordinary people in the form of health costs and missed work and all the rest of it, and you're putting it in the pockets of industrialists.
So, as it turns out, when Donald Trump and Scott Pruitt and these guys all say cutting regulations is good for the economy, turns out they're lying, and their own report from their own administration now shows it?
Yep.
Imagine that.
Meanwhile, in Colorado, after heavy lobbying from the oil and gas industry, Republican lawmakers in the state legislature last week killed proposed legislation that would have required Colorado state regulators of the oil and gas industry to prioritize public safety and to treat protection of public health and the environment as a precondition before allowing further encroachment of drilling operations inside city limits and near homes and schools.
Well, we'd hate to do that.
In Utah, in the fight to save Bears Ears National Monument, internal Interior Department emails obtained in a lawsuit by the New York Times show that oil and gas were the primary motivation behind the Trump administration's decision to shrink the monument. The Trump administration had claimed early last year that its so-called monument review had no predetermined outcomes, but the internal documents tell a different story, showing that long before the review was launched, Interior Department officials were primarily focused on oil and gas exploration. Native American tribes have vowed to sue over Trump's plans to cut nearly 90% of the monument in southeastern Utah. Finally, some good news, at least for folks in Montana. Speaking of Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, he has unexpectedly withdrawn more than 17,000 acres of the public's lands from consideration for an auction of leases to the oil and natural gas industry. Local and national environmental groups had tried to stop the sale, arguing drilling in these areas would harm the Yellowstone River and other sensitive regions. Zinke said that the department needed to study the area more before putting it up for auction. I'm sure it's purely coincidental that the protected lands happen to be located in Zinke's home state,
where he's planning to run for governor. So he takes all this public land out of our national parks so that it can be sold, given away to oil and gas interests. But in his own home state, he protects public lands from those very same oil and gas interests.
Funny that.
For much more on all of these reports and the ones we couldn't get to, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us, follow us, and share us worldwide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
This land is your land, and this land is my land. From the California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
I own nothing in Russia. I have no loans in Russia. I don't have any deals in Russia. Mike was doing his job. He was calling countries and his counterparts. So it certainly would have been okay with me if he did it. I would have directed him to do it if I thought he wasn't doing it. I didn't direct him, but I would have directed him because that's his job. And probably Putin said, you know, he's sitting behind his desk and he's saying, you know, I see what's going on in the United States. They follow it closely. It's going to be impossible for President Trump to ever get along with Russia because of all the pressure he's got with this fake story, okay?
Now, that is Donald Trump saying he had no deals in Russia, he wasn't talking to anybody, and that turned out to be untrue. Michael Cohen, his attorney, was talking to Russians and talking to them about Trump Tower Moscow during the election. Now, this interesting little tale on this about how, he was talking about Michael Flynn there. I would have told Michael Flynn to talk to the Russians if he wasn't talking to the Russians because we got to talk to the Russians. And, he's just doing his job, but I didn't order him to, but I would have if he wasn't. And then he says, it's going to be impossible for, Putin is sitting behind his desk and he's saying it's going to be impossible for Trump to get along with Russia because of this witch hunt, because of this, this terrible, terrible witch hunt that's going on. Well, the Democrats have put together and released last night their own status report on the Russia investigation, which is just it's fabulously eye-opening because there are so many things, so many questions that the GOP decided not to answer. Not to answer, like, what are we doing to protect the elections? What about security? Or what about, the email hack? Who did it? And did Trump get those emails? And who knew those emails were coming? And why can't we talk to the people that, were telegraphing to the world that they know what's coming, that they know what's next, that they know which emails are coming? And what about Don Jr.'s and his meeting in Trump Tower? And what about all the people that attended that meeting? Why can't we talk to them? And why can't we see the documents? And why can't we see, the only thing that they could see is crap that Jr. tweets his own, you know what I mean? It's so they have all of these lines of inquiry that have never been satisfied about during the election, during the campaign, during the transition, and then post-election, also after the election, that when we found out that the United States sanctioned Russia, right? And the president-elect's national security advisor who pled guilty to lying, right, to the FBI, Michael Flynn, he had the knowledge about sanctions being removed and was tweeting it at the inauguration. Well, what the hell is that? And the House has never called Michael Flynn. The House, there are so many witnesses that the House wants to call, the Democrats in the House want to call, that the Republicans will not call.
That was a terrible disservice to the country and the American people and represented a reneging on the commitment that was made at the outset of the investigation to follow the facts wherever they lead.
Yes.
Instead, what the majority on the Intelligence Committee did was go through the motions of an investigation, call in witnesses but allow them to refuse to answer questions, allow them to invoke non-existent privileges, or simply decline to answer because the witness didn't deem the question relevant or because they would rather not say. Documents that were necessary to obtain to determine whether witnesses were telling the truth would not be subpoenaed. This is no way to run an investigation. It is only a way to go through the motions to give the pretense of trying to find the truth.
Okay, and so last night, the House Democrats released a document. It's called the status report of the Russia investigation, and They begin with, the findings of the intelligence agencies, the DNI, the NSA, the FBI, and the CIA, signed off on by all the intelligence agencies, but the lion's share of the heavy lifting done by the FBI, the NSA, the DNI, and the CIA. And they have uniformly concluded that Russia is again meddling and that they seek to influence our 2018 elections. And they, in the House, the Democrats, are trying to develop a comprehensive understanding of the 2016 covert and overt attack on our elections, whether it was through propaganda or money laundering or whatever. And this is what they say. They say they've never gotten answers to the hacking and the dissemination of the campaign emails. All they know is that there were cutouts like WikiLeaks and Guccifer 2.0 and fake websites like DC Leaks and the Alex Jones crap and the purveyors of fake news, the Sean Hannitys and the others and the Rush Limbaughs. Okay, that's all that they know. There were these cutouts, but they have so many outstanding questions. Like, did the Trump campaign get advanced knowledge of the stolen materials, or did they get access to the stolen materials? Did the stolen documents inform their campaign activity? Did they target different voters in the election because Russia took this area and so they didn't have to spend their money there and they would target their efforts over here? What was the chain of custody of the hacked emails? What was the chain of custody of the stolen emails? And who decided to weaponize them? And how do, various people know about the strategic release? And why were they released moments after the Access Hollywood tape was aired? And who knew that that was coming? Okay, that's just one part of their inquiry that they don't know. They want to know, what George Papadopoulos knew, because they've never been able to interview George Papadopoulos. But George Papadopoulos was one of the 5 named security experts on Trump's, team early in the campaign. Well, not really early. It was like April of 2016. And Papadopoulos was the one that was running around saying the Russians have dirt on Hillary Clinton. They say they have thousands of Hillary Clinton's emails. That was what was presented to the FISA court. Nunes' memo is not even worth the paper he wrote it on. It's a lie. They didn't base it on the Steele dossier. The corroboration of the Steele dossier came before the Steele dossier. The intelligence communities already had the information from George Papadopoulos by the time they got the Steele dossier, which said the same thing George Papadopoulos said, and produced documents that showed that they said they had thousands of emails on Hillary Clinton and dirt on Hillary Clinton. It's funny that, they use the same words, right? But the DOJ revealed that the Russians previewed the release of this information, meaning they showed it to George Papadopoulos at that time. And the early date of April 2016 is important because the Clinton campaign wasn't even aware that the Russians possessed stolen emails, and there was no such thing as a Steele dossier at that time. So, again, Devin Nunes and Mike Conaway and all these Republicans, they're lying. And it's demonstrably provable that they're lying. They just hope it's so confusing. Oh, my God, timelines won't solve it. These people are too stupid. Yeah, okay. Several weeks after Papadopoulos actually told the campaign that the Russians had thousands of Hillary Clinton's stolen emails, that they had hacked her, they stole them, and that they had this dirt and that they could release it to them. June 2016, at the highest levels of the Trump campaign, the Kremlin contacts, at least we know, Junior, to say they had dirt on Hillary Clinton, confirming what George Papadopoulos had said. And in that email, it said the Russian government would like to show its support for Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States. And the Republicans conclude that the Russians didn't have a preference in their dump of documents the other day. Really? How do you get to that conclusion when clearly the emails from Junior say the Russian government supports Donald Trump and they'd like to pony up some dirt on Hillary Clinton to show their support? How do you conclude there was no collusion? I don't understand. But anyway, the campaign response to the offer from the Russians was, if you say it is what it is, real dirt on Hillary, we would love that. We would love the help, particularly as the general election comes closer to the end of the summer. We would love that. And then we're disappointed in what Natalia Veselnitskaya turned over. We're disappointed. So days after the Trump Tower meeting, WikiLeaks, the cutout, actually says, all right, we'll show you what we mean. We'll show you. And they announce that they have stolen emails and that they received them. And now we know that they received them from Russia and that they're going to leak some of them. So they do. What else did the Russians tell George Papadopoulos? What else did the Russians tell others in the campaign? Junior and Jared and Manafort, for God's sake. And how did they relay it? How are they communicating? And who on the campaign did George Papadopoulos, who was in frequent contact with the Trump campaign, in the highest levels, because there was a tiny little group of people. When George Papadopoulos and Carter Page and Waleed Ferris were the foreign policy advisors, there were maybe 6 people on the Trump campaign. And they're talking to each other. There's meetings. There's photographs of them sitting at a conference table. They just sat at the conference table, ate lunch. They didn't discuss anything. I mean, there's 10 people on the campaign at this point. And then, of course, after the election, we have the Michael Flynn. He knows about the sanctions are going to be removed. And, the sanctions that are going to be removed are the ones that were placed on Russia for punishment for interfering in the election. But Flynn's tweeting and Flynn's sending messages, don't worry. And then, of course, we've done nothing on election security. We know the outgoing Rex Tillerson was appropriated, $120 million to combat this and spent $0. No money at the State Department spent. No money whatsoever. No Russian speakers. Nobody to intercept messages. Nobody to contradict the propaganda. Nobody to, point out that it's propaganda. To Facebook, to Twitter, whoever's going to publish it, right? Nothing. Nothing's been done. And then the whole social media campaign, right? Nothing's been done on that. Absolutely nothing. The Democrats wanted to subpoena Facebook. They wanted to subpoena Twitter. They wanted to subpoena Google after they acknowledged. I mean, they went up to Capitol Hill. We saw that testimony. It was November 1st, 2017. And they said that they were going to do a forensic investigation, very extensive. And they were going to determine the full extent of the weaponization of their platforms. They were going to map the network. They were going to map the rubles. They were going to see the covert personas. They were going to see whose identities were stolen. They were going to determine how Russia, amplified the accounts, where the bots came from, how the propaganda, ended up on their platforms, including through paid advertising, paid foreign rubles. And they were going to, testify that they, about their full understanding of how the Russian disinformation spread across their platforms. Well, what happened was the Republicans never subpoenaed them to come back, never subpoenaed for documents, never subpoenaed for direct messages, never subpoenaed, anything. And then, of course, the other point of the document that the Democrats released last night has to do with money laundering, financial leverage. Because we don't know Donald Trump's, the full breadth of Donald Trump's finances, we don't know how credible his allegations are that he had no, nothing to do with Russian money. He had no, we know he didn't have a business deal that was accepted by Russia, but now we know he was certainly trying. When he said he didn't have, it was because the Russians said no during the campaign. But we don't know if he used Trump properties to launder money by Russian oligarchs like Trump Soho and the Felix Sater portion of it. We've never heard from Felix Sater. We don't know. All we know is, for example, Deutsche Bank, who was fined $630 million in 2017, last year, because it got caught laundering $10 billion in Russian money. We know that they are a constant source of financing for President Donald Trump, for Trump businesses, for Trump family members. But we don't really know the full relationship between Trump and Deutsche Bank and between Deutsche Bank and Putin, because they won't subpoena Deutsche Bank. The GOP will not. That's what's in this report.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force. The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Mitchell Gold and Bob Williams introduces its Spring 2018 home collection of classic, modern, and new traditional silhouettes in a vivid spectrum of colors, textures, patterns, and prints. The new spring collection features a modern slant with clean-lined and comfortable styles that pay tribute to iconic American designs from the mid-century to the late 1970s. Experience the new collection in comfort at a signature store near you, or peruse the entire collection in e-catalog online. Find a store and shop online at mgbwhome.com. Join the Mitchell Gold and Bob Williams Comfort Club, a customer loyalty program that offers you 20% savings every day with exclusive access to special member-only offers and services like complimentary in-home design. It's free. It's easy to join. Sign up now. Start saving today at a Mitchell Gold and Bob Williams signature store near you or online at mgbwhome.com.
Hey guys, it's Scotty, Randi's producer here, and as many of you know, I grew up in Randi's house. You know, eating her food, watching her TV, and like most kids, ignorantly not following her advice. And one of her biggest pieces of advice was, never take a job in radio, because the big companies that run radio, they suck. Well, I didn't listen and ended up working in radio, and as always, Randi was right, they sucked. But I'm here now, and I can tell you that it takes a lot of chutzpah to break away from the big companies and start your own show. But you know what else it takes? Your support. We are independent media, so the only financial backers we have are you, the best listeners in the world. And we can't do it without you. So please, go to RandiRhodes.com and support the show, buy a stinking podcast, donate some money, and keep us going.
Try and get up every morning, day after day, and work for a living. Let's see him try that. Then we'll see who's the real tough guy. The working man is the tough guy.
With me, Joe Wilson, a wealth management advisor with a big money management house.
Mo money, yo money, Joe money. We're happy to get the kind of money that jingles, but we'd rather get the kind that folds.
Not your grandpa's financial show. What's going on, my money mavens and moolah misfits? It's me, your money guy, Joe Wilson of the Joe Knows Money Show. Report live on Progressive Voices Network, delivering you 4 minutes of money news you can use.
Fancy cars and fancy clothes. I really like the way that sounds. But that's not greed, just what I need. Cause money makes the world go round.
Set the clock. On your mark. Get set.
Trending
go.
This week in money news, the average college graduate in 2017 had over $37,000 in student loan debt. That leads me to my next topic. 4 ways to improve your chances of getting a college scholarship. Tip number 1, apply for local scholarships. Many communities offer local scholarships through clubs, organizations, small businesses, and benefactors. The odds of winning these scholarships are greater because they're open to a smaller group of students. Here's how you find local scholarships. Check with your teachers or guidance counselor. Search local media websites like television and radio stations. And use geographical internet searches like scholarships in Georgia. Tip number 2, apply for scholarships with smaller awards. Many students look for the scholarships that offer the biggest bucks, but those are also the most competitive. Scholarships with smaller awards usually have fewer applicants, so your chances of winning are much, much greater. These scholarships can help with college costs like books, supplies, and living expenses. Tip number 3, many students avoid scholarships that require a lot of work, such as essays, videos, and projects. As a result, the applicant pool is much smaller. smaller, which means you have a greater chance of winning. Tip number 4, apply for as many scholarships as you can. Treat it like a part-time job and set aside several hours each month to look and apply for scholarships. Now it's time for Joe's Money Trap of the Day. Every year, several 100,000 parents and students are defrauded by scholarship scams. Scam operations often imitate legitimate government agencies. In general, be wary of scholarships with an application fee, scholarship matching services who guarantee success, and sales pitches disguised as a financial aid seminar. Here is Joe's Money Grab of the Day. 5 scholarship search tools to help you find free money. Number 1, Scully. Number 2, College Board Scholarship Search. Number 3, FastWeb. Number 4, Scholarship.com. And number 5, Scholarship Monkey. And now it's time for Joe's Quote of the Day. Private student loans should be avoided at all costs. That is a quote by Susie Orman. You're listening to the Joe Knows Money Show on Progressive Voices Network. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Joe Knows Money to hear this and other money news you can use segments.
Hello, I'm Casey Hobbs.
And I'm Shane Mason, and we're the hosts of Nurse Talk Radio.
Here's what we're talking about this week.
What's it like to lose your mind, to see slices of one's identity slowly drifting away? Veteran journalist Greg O'Brien likens the journey in his expanded edition of On Pluto, Inside the Mind of Alzheimer's, with 12 new chapters to a flyby of the dwarf planet Pluto, as seen through the...
Go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.